Our Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at Bet Online and SCL Mortgage. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network. And I am here this morning. I'm actually pre-recording this. I'm going to premiere it on MHS in a little bit, but couldn't sleep, had to do some things later today as well. So just wanted to talk about this game really quickly. And talk about this moment in time for the Nuggets really quickly, as they are not in a fantastic place. They lose to the Portland Trailblazers 128-109 last night. Jamal Murray did return, but Nikola Jokic sat out. He is still hurt and potentially going to miss the game in Houston as well. But he may have to come back maybe a little bit sooner than Nuggets fans would have hoped for, because Denver's only 3 games up in the loss column on the 7 seed right now. That's not as high as you would want it to be in terms of that gap. Denver has not played that well over the course of the post All-Star break stretch, and as a result, they have put fate into their own hands, unfortunately, or put fate in, like, kind of taken it out of their hands in some ways. I mean, and that's just not a great place for any team to be, let alone a team like the Nuggets that is like they are trying to rest down the stretch, and now they kind of have to fight a little bit harder because they're not taking advantage of these games that they do have. Losing to the Wizards, losing to the Blazers, when you drop those kinds of games, like Denver had already had 20 of their 26 after Charlotte, 20 of their 26 were against plus 500 teams. And now you're losing the games as well when you're not playing above 500 teams. So Denver's hurting themselves in this stretch. And I don't know. Like, there's a lot of folks that are pretty disappointed in what's going on, and there's a lot of folks that are kind of resigned to what's going on in the Nuggets. I'm struggling to figure out which team that they are. Are they the team that is resigned to their fate, or are they the team that is upset and getting ready to change something? You kind of are what your record says you are, and you are what the team says you are, or at least that's what history tells us. So we'll get into all of that. We'll talk about a variety of different things. But really quickly, this podcast, as you know, it's brought to you by the good folks over at Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025 and for all the madness that's been going on. First round is over in March Madness. In my family bracket, I went 28 out of 32. I felt pretty good about that. Picked against Clemson in that 5-12 matchup because screw Clemson. I, as a South Carolina alum, certainly will not be picking Clemson when I have the opportunity. So sorry, Hunter Tyson. Sorry, PJ Hall. But yeah, Bet Online has you covered if you want to get in on their bracket contest. Not sure where that stands right now after the tournament has officially began. But if you want to bet on individual games, Bet Online has you covered. They're your number one sports betting source in 2025. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, Bet Online has got you with odds, stats, and more. Make sure to check them out at betonline.ag. Okay, so Denver loses 128-109 last night. I'm going to talk about that game in the first segment, talk about the defense. Then in the second segment, we'll take a quick break, and we will discuss the blame game and how much the blame game should be played at this stage of the season, as well as I've got a chart that I'm going to add to the screen. Lineups with Jokic and lineups without Jokic. The lineups without Jokic have been very interesting. I'm going to kind of take people through some of the groups that the Nuggets have used lately. Lot to talk about, though, from this Blazers game. I initially didn't think that I was going to be watching this one because we had a party going on at MHS. Shout out to Anilo Piro, who is departing. He's going to 104.3 The Fan. He's going to be fantastic over there. They're getting a fantastic person and a fantastic professional. But we were over drinking, having a good time, and I decided, okay, you know what? No, I'm going to go do my job. It's time I have to do my job. I've got to do it right. That's like the Nuggets going to Portland on a Friday night and Like, yeah, it's not ideal situation. Yeah, you don't necessarily want to have to do it, but this is the job. You have to do it. There's a certain level of expertise that you have in this thing, taking advantage of teams that should have no business competing with you, even without Jokic. And the Blazers gave Denver every opportunity. They turned the ball over 17 times. They weren't shooting the basketball at a very high level in the first half. They weren't making all of their shots at the beginning, but the Nuggets were giving them extra opportunities on a consistent basis. The Blazers had 15 offensive rebounds. The Nuggets had 20 defensive rebounds. So you do the math there. Basically, 3 out of every 7 offensive rebounding opportunities the Blazers were able to get. That's 42%. That is wild. And it's unfortunate that, like, look, Jokic goes out. He's your best rebounder. That's not something that people usually account for when they're talking about defense. But it has hurt the Nuggets when Jokic has been off the floor. And you would think that a guy like Michael Porter, you think that Aaron Gordon, especially when they're matching up, the Blazers started Tumani Kamara, Chris Murray, and Denny Avdia in their front court. Denny basically played a small ball center role. But the Blazers didn't have any problems hustling. The Blazers didn't have any problems playing hard. They're the team that's outside of the playoff picture. In theory, the Nuggets should be the team that has something to play for, that's trying to prove something, that's getting playoff position, doing the things that winning teams do, winning on the margins. But the Blazers out-hustled and outworked the Nuggets from tip-off. Denver started off shooting the ball reasonably well and playing reasonably well. Michael Porter got a bucket here. Aaron Gordon got to the line 6 times in like the first 6 minutes. Russell Westbrook was playing pretty well. But then things fell apart because Denver did not take care of the details. And when you don't take care of the details against a team like the Blazers, they give you every opportunity to roll over and die. And that is what the Nuggets did. The Blazers were down 59-54 at halftime. They won 128-109, which means 74-50 was the margin in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. And a lot of that was bad process, especially offensively from Denver and especially defensively from Denver. Just on both ends of the floor, Denver laid an egg. Russell Westbrook had 9 turnovers in this game, finished with 5 fouls. 3 of them at least were offensive fouls, just out of control, out of whack, and going about things the wrong way in this particular matchup against a team that was going to accentuate defensive contact. The Blazers are really good at that. If the Nuggets knew the scouting report in this one, they would know that that's what the Blazers do. And they probably did know. They just didn't take advantage of that. Aaron Gordon grabbed 3 rebounds total, including 1 defensive rebound. It's kind of like not super exciting stuff from AG on the defensive glass. Michael Porter had 4 defensive rebounds. That was tied for the team lead. Jamal Murray had 4 defensive rebounds. Russell Westbrook had 3. Christian Brown had 3. Peyton Watson had 4 off the bench. Zeke Naji had 1. You're not expecting a lot from him. Jalen Pickett had 0. And Spencer Jones had 0, but he only played 6 minutes. So hard to really blame much of anybody there. But like, look, the Blazers at one point were not shooting a great percentage, but they got better as the game went along. And even when they missed, they were still getting offensive rebounding opportunities throughout this one. And Denver just didn't have any answers for a team that was out hustling them. It was really sad, actually. Jamal Murray made his return and should have been able to take on a little bit of that pressure offensively. But as it turns out, Russell Westbrook was the guy that handled the ball the majority of the time. Aaron Gordon handled the ball the majority of the time. And Jamal only took 10 shots, 5 of 10 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3, didn't get to the free throw line, 3 turnovers, 2 assists. Not a good night for Jamal. He wasn't the only one, though, because Michael Porter, I think, was probably like Russell Westbrook was the least or the most impactful in a negative way for Denver because of the 9 turnovers. Like that's an inexcusable number, and nobody can justify that unless you are James Harden scoring 36, 15, and 15 in a game. Like, that's the only way to do it. Russ had 18 points, and he had 15 in the first half and was 5 of 6 from the field in the first half, 1 of 7 in the second half. Not good enough. But he shouldn't be expected to carry that burden. The guys that should be expected to carry it are Jamal Murray and Michael Porter. And they combined for 20 shots. They were 10 of 20. Nothing crazy, but like nothing horrible. But 27 points on 20 shots, 6 turnovers between them, 5 assists between them. Just super meh. Super not potent at all. Aaron Gordon has been Denver's best player by far over the course of these last 3 games. And like, that's fine because Aaron at previous times was better than Jamal. And Jamal he got hurt, of course, missed the previous 2 games. And then is coming back off of this one and probably coming back a little bit too soon because the Nuggets needed a win. He was clearly trying to gut through it. And I love some of the defensive stuff that he did, like hunting passing lanes. He got a block. There were some good things that he did. Russell Westbrook had 3 steals. Like, there are some opportunities there. Zeke Naji was hustling 3 steals and a block. Peyton Watson, I thought, was pretty good defensively in this game. Michael Porter was horrible. Aaron Gordon was subpar. Christian Brown, not good. Not good defensively from Christian Brown. Just got off his feet a lot of the time, out of position a lot of the time, and just didn't really impact the game defensively. Jalen Pickett, taken advantage of because he's too small. Now, he did other positive things. 5 assists, 1 steal, 0 turnovers. Hard to blame Jalen Pickett for the 20 turnovers when he had 0 of them. But Denver just looks disconnected. And the defense is the biggest reason why. You should be able to win if you score 109 without your best player, if you lock in defensively. But the Nuggets were just shambolic on that end. On again, it just happens again. And defense, like, even without Jokic, has become the defining storyline for the Nuggets. Here's some numbers that I pulled. The Nuggets have the 21st ranked defensive rating on NBA.com. They are, I think, 22nd or 23rd on cleaning the glass. They are 22nd on dunks and threes. So they're in the 20s now. They are no longer in the teens. They are not a team that can say that they are average. Like, when you're in the teens, I think you can say that you're an average team, and okay, a number here, a basket here, maybe a bad run there. Maybe that drags you down to 18th or 19th, whatever. When you're in the 20s, there's no real faking it. That's more numbers and more of a gap than you can really account for and say, oh yeah, we're average. No, the Nuggets are not average. They are subpar. They are bordering on incompetent on that end of the floor. And without Jokic, there should be different ways that Denver can play in order to be good defensively. It should be switching, sitting down and guarding in isolation, keeping your man in front of you, and then forcing turnovers because you don't get a lane. But Denver has not been able to do that because they can't stay in front of their man. And it's one of the reasons why, while I do criticize Jokic for his defense, and I think rightly so, he's certainly not the only one. And games like this only inflame that idea that clearly the defensive problems for Denver go way deeper than one person. And the fact of the matter is that the only reason that the Nuggets have been in most of the games that they are is because they have an elite offense. And the only reason they have an elite offense is because of that guy. So it's a tough place for Denver to be. But here's the thing. You can't write off Denver entirely because in the games when they do play good defense, they're incredible. They have so I broke this down. I wanted to see, okay, what is not just an average level, because it's fine to play average on defense. How many games has Denver actually played well? How many times have they been good defensively? And so I kind of eyeballed it and said, all right, well, The 10th ranked defense is like a 111.7 defensive rating. 11th ranked is about 112.3. All right, let's see 112. That seems about right. It means you're playing at a top 10 defensive level. So any game that the Nuggets played that they had a 112 defensive rating or better is what I'm counting as a good defensive night for the Nuggets. And other things kind of pile into that. Maybe Denver was giving up open shots, but teams just didn't hit them. I'm not accounting for that. Maybe Denver had, like, in some games where they gave up a 115 or a 116 defensive rating, maybe they were contesting really well and following defensive principles, but other teams just made shots. And sometimes it's really difficult. But in this results oriented format, the Nuggets have had a 112 defensive rating or better or lower 28 total times out of 71 games. That's not good. It means that they've not done it 43 times. But stick with me here. 28 total times. The Nuggets are 25-3 in those games. 25-3. And you want to know what the 3 losses were? Oklahoma City on opening night. New Orleans in November without Jokic. And Memphis in November without Jokic. OKC, obviously, like, that's one that you can just lose because they're an elite defensive team, and sometimes you're not going to be able to score against them. But the 2 games without Jokic, you can understand because Denver they weren't good enough offensively in those 2 games to make up for even when they played reasonable defense. So Denver, if you eliminate those 2 non-Jokic games, is quite literally 25-1 when they have a 112 defensive rating or better. They are 19-24 in all other games when they don't play good defense, where it's merely average or worse. So what that says to me is that if Denver can turn this thing around and start to play some better defense, they give themselves a chance because of how good they are offensively. Expecting that to happen is ludicrous at this point because you are what your record says you are, and Denver's a subpar defense. They just are. So maybe something can change in the playoffs. Maybe the Nuggets find ways to lock in. Maybe a lot of it, the gap is effort, and the playoffs bring out better effort. I don't think that's the case, but you can see a vision where once they figure out some defensive things, they can be a champion. But expecting that to happen against elite offenses and elite defenses at the same time, the best of the best in the NBA, doesn't sound right to me. So we'll see. We'll see what ultimately happens here. Is the defense gone forever? Aaron Hernandez? No, it's not gone forever. But it's certainly been taking a hiatus. And for those that thought that the defense would be better without Nikola Jokic, it was better for one game against the Golden State Warriors. And then the Nuggets, I think, remember that they are the Nuggets defensively, which is not good. All right. When we come back, we are going to play the blame game, or ask, should the blame game be even played? And I'm going to talk about some lineups without Jokic. We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll. Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Really quickly, I should do the read that I'm supposed to do. That's contractually obligated. SEL Mortgage, our newest sponsor on this podcast. Very excited to be partnering with them. Are you looking for a great mortgage company that you can trust? They have hundreds of happy customers and a 5-star reputation. Our friends over at SEL Mortgage are great, whether you need a mortgage loan, are self-employed, need a new home, need a down payment, if you need a second mortgage, whatever it is, SEL Mortgage can provide. Just make sure to contact them at 303-790-2222 or visit myspecialmortgage.com. Again, that's 303-790-2222. All right. Should the blame game be played? I bring this up because as an analyst, as somebody that's trying to evaluate what's going wrong and what's going right, I have to assign credit and blame. And that's just a requirement of the job for me. Other folks like Vinny Benedetto over at the Denver Gazette, Bennett Durando over at the Denver Post, they mostly cover it from like what exactly happened. And my goal, and like there's that perspective, there's more of the fan perspective in terms of the overly reactionary stuff. I try to balance those two things, try to be as objective as I can, but also understanding that there are some inherent biases and there are some perspectives that I have, and that I do want the Nuggets to do well. Like that's a goal of mine. That's something I want to have happen first and foremost because it's the team that I grew up with. I grew up in Denver. I'm a Denverite through and through, and like it's awesome to be able to cover the hometown team, a team that I've loved for a long time. But as I transition into being a media member, this is my 6th year covering the team full time. I have to be honest about a lot of the things that I'm seeing and try to be as objective and separate myself from the fan side of it as possible while covering what's right and not just what I want. And so when you start to play the blame game, it can get a little bit dangerous because people think a lot of times I have ulterior motives for various things. Oh, you just don't like Russell Westbrook, Ryan. Oh, you just want you just don't like this guy. You're just unhappy that they don't give you an interview, things like that. I get that all the time. I try to balance what are my inherent biases with just what I'm seeing through numbers, through film, through talking to people, through interviewing coaches and players, trying to do as much as I can. So when I talk about the blame game, it's tough because I can talk about Michael Porter Jr. and the defense that he's been playing lately. I can talk about the effort that he's been putting in on that end of the floor, which is high. It is a high level of effort. I really do think that. Like, what I see is somebody who is struggling right now at this stage of the season with being healthy and being available and being out there, and somebody that doesn't look quite right. But I don't see it from the and like the other thing is kind of like um with Jokic in a different way. Jokic always kind of sees the game and he's able to make up for some of his physical limitations by being one of the smartest players ever. Mike is not one of the smartest players ever. He's learning, he's growing. But when he is athletically compromised, which I kind of think he is, the slower reaction time that he often has in these situations really hurts him. And so teams have been able to pick on him a lot. So he deserves some blame for how the defense has gone. Jamal Murray coming back doesn't look right. Even when he has been at his physical peak, he still has spacey moments on the defensive end. He's willing to give up some things because it's like in the long term, it's probably not going to hurt Denver. Sometimes I think that's the perspective that he often takes. But there's a lot of times that he does make plays and he does try, but he also isn't a great defender inherently. So he deserves some blame. The way that the roster is constructed deserves some blame. I think that that has put a lot of pressure onto each individual piece of the rotation and the head coach. Jokic has the most pressure of any first option in the NBA. Jamal Murray doesn't have the most pressure, but he's being asked to do a lot because sometimes the third option in Mike or the fourth option in Aaron don't always step up on the offensive end. Now Aaron's been great lately, so it's hard to hate that, but he's also been hurt for half of this season. So can you trust that all the time? I don't know. Christian's still figuring some things out. He's been better offensively than a lot of people give him credit for, but defensively he's taken a hit. And so I can go through a lot of different people to blame. And above all, like Michael Malone, for as much as I genuinely value what he brings to the table, both from a basketball side and from a media side, he also deserves some blame because he's not blameless in this particular situation for the Nuggets are now lacking motivation on the defensive end of the floor, and they are lacking a lot of traits, I think, that make a great championship team. First and foremost is the want to. And I think Michael Malone would self-admit that the want to with this team probably isn't there, at least not on a consistent basis enough to be a truly great team. So everybody, I think, gets a share of the blame. So my premise in this, should the blame game even be played at this point? Is it fair to anybody to play the blame game at this point, especially at this point in the season where it's game 71 that they just played? Do you wait until the end of the year to start evaluating all of these issues, or do you just go full in and try to identify and understand why these things have happened, what has actually happened that has made things go poorly, and who is responsible for it? I don't know. It's one of the hard things about being in this position because you don't want to write off the team before they actually do fail. And they haven't failed yet. As much as it feels like they're going to, and as much ammunition as they're giving a lot of people in terms of expecting them to fail, they haven't failed yet. They're still the 4 seed. Jokic hasn't been playing. If he comes back and they look great, maybe this looks dumb. Maybe this is a thing that, like, you just match up with the right teams. You take advantage of a team. Let's say you face OKC in the second round and you surprise them. You're like, oh, crap. You're in the Western Conference Finals. You have an opportunity to go to the NBA Finals. It suddenly becomes very real if you're able to get through a situation like that. So I struggle with the blame game, and especially when I talk about roster changes, and I've been talking about roster changes for my entire career. It's one of the things that I do take pride in, is the ability to see where a team is lacking and being able to identify possible solutions. Not all of those solutions are great, and Denver's this year were not great. Case in point, Zach LaVine. Case in point, Jimmy Butler. Zach LaVine may not have been very helpful, especially on the defensive front. He's currently floundering with the Sacramento Kings right now. He was playing great offensively, but the Kings are going nowhere. And then with the Warriors, Jimmy's always great in the first year, but just wait until what happens next year with them. They're going to be miserable, and he's not going to be very good. So that wasn't going to be a fail-safe for Denver in any way, shape, or form. So there's a lot that kind of goes into, like, okay, you making a change just to make a change. Like, Ryan, you really know what you're talking about on that front? I think so. The problem is that Denver was in a horrible position to begin with, and a lot of it was born from, you guessed it, mistakes that you can blame Calvin Booth on. That sucks, because if you're a Nuggets fan, you don't want to hear that all the time. Like, it's a tough place for you to be. So I'm not going to play the blame game that much until Denver actually is out. I will talk about why they're losing. I will talk about, like, okay, there's a lot of different aspects, but in terms of zeroing in on each individual one and really, like, bashing everybody in over the skull, like, I'm not going to do that. I don't think that it's that reasonable at this point, because there's, like, everybody shares blame. This is a team sport. This is a team game. Calvin Booth could have put together the best roster imaginable, If Michael Malone doesn't use the pieces correctly, then he's to blame. I'm not sure that's what's happening. I'm not sure Calvin Booth was that far off in terms of the ideas that he had. Sometimes you just get unlucky with the Deron Holmes injury. Sometimes, like, you think that a guy's going to pan out, and they just don't end up doing so, like Dario Saric. I thought he would pan out. I'm not going to lie from that. It didn't work, and he's been horrible. So, tough place for Denver to be. So should the blame game be played? You can play it. I won't criticize you. I won't criticize anybody for trying to identify the individual issues that the Nuggets have. But you're going to come up with a laundry list, and there's just no solving that until the offseason. Final thing here, going to this view, lineups without Jokic that the Nuggets have played this year. I wanted to put this up on the screen. This is via data from Cleaning the Glass. I made this, though. Highlighted in blue on the screen are starters. I am not counting Westbrook as a starter, not counting Watson as a starter, not counting Strawther as a starter, obviously. Murray, Brown, Porter, Gordon. And then Jokic is obviously off the floor. At the bottom of that screen, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that the Nuggets have a minus 10.2 net rating with Jokic off the floor in 2,190 possessions this year. What's interesting is that Denver has played so many different lineups without Jokic that the top lineup that they have played, Russell Westbrook, Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Michael Porter, DeAndre Jordan, has only played 102 possessions. 102. That's crazy. So that's 4 of your top 6, if you're including Westbrook as the 6th man, of course, plus DeAndre Jordan. That lineup's actually been pretty good. There are other lineups in this that have been pretty good. Westbrook, Murray, Strawther, Watson, Jordan. That's been pretty solid. Murray, Strawther, Watson, Porter, Jordan. That's been pretty solid. That one's really good offensively. That's their best offensive lineup without Jokic on the floor. And that actually makes sense because Jordan is just a traditional rim runner who can put pressure on there. He can screen. And then you've got Murray and Strawther there, along with Michael Porter spacing at the 4. I like that lineup. In addition, Denver's got another couple of positive lineups. Murray, Brown, Watson, Porter, Saric is positive, although the big reason why that one's positive in 78 possessions is because they have a defensive rating of 75.6. I'm calling cap on that. That is not holding up in court. A Saric-Porter 4-5 combination, that is not going to hold up defensively. So throw that one out. Another one, Westbrook, Murray, Watson, Porter, Zeke Naji. That one's actually pretty good. I could see that one being better defensively because you've got Westbrook out there along with Naji and Watson. And then you've got Murray and Porter out there. Can you help those guys with good defensive process? And then Murray and Porter kind of carry offensively. Westbrook is slashing, doing his thing. Maybe. 105.4 offensive rating, 90 defensive rating, 15.4 net rating. But there are some pretty bad lineups here as well. And most of them are just bad offensively. The Murray, Strawther, Watson, Gordon, Jordan lineup that was doing pretty well for a while has actually been really bad. They've had some really, really bad moments. The initial lineup that the Nuggets tried to use, Westbrook, Murray, Brown, Porter, Saric, 138.9 defensive rating. So obviously a little bit different from the 75.6 defensive rating from the Porter-Saric combination earlier. But that other group, not very good defensively. Another group that's not been good defensively, Murray, Brown, Strawther, Watson, Jordan. Kind of interesting. If you just flip Brown and Porter, that one's a little bit better. That one's you get the offense that you're looking for, but the defense was actually better because you're putting some guys in different positions. You're getting more defensive rebounding. I'm not sure that's actually better in a defensive context, though. Again, these are all very small sample size. But the one on the bottom is the one that I want to point out. It's a bonus lineup. It didn't meet the top 10 in terms of possessions. Only 36 possessions played total. Westbrook, Murray, Brown, Porter Gordon, excuse me. It's the only lineup that includes Gordon at the 5, AG. 105.6 offensive rating, 162.2 defensive rating, minus 56.6 net rating. Again, 36 possessions. Not a lot. But that is 5 of your top 6 players. The only guy sitting is Jokic. Denver has to get that lineup to a good place. If it is not in a good place, they will not win a darn thing in the playoffs. That lineup will play in the playoffs. So it better get better. Like, frankly, that is a 100% have to be better kind of lineup. I don't think it will be. It will be better than minus 56, but it's not going to be good enough, I think, to carry the day. But who knows? Maybe that's wrong. Maybe Denver finds something out. Maybe they figure something out. But look, Denver, the reason why I pull all these lineups, Denver doesn't have a lot of great solutions. But the one solution that I think that they're going to go back to in the coming days, I think they're going to bring back out DeAndre Jordan. I really do. I think DeAndre Jordan's going to play some backup 5. I'm going to guess that Zeke Naji goes back to the bench. Peyton Watson will play the 3-4 as opposed to the 2-3 a little bit more. And they're just going to go with an 8-man rotation. That would be my guess. Like when the playoffs roll around, I would guess 8-man rotation. Murray, Brown, Porter, Gordon, Jokic, Westbrook, Watson, DJ. And DJ is probably going to play like 8 minutes. So it's really a 7.5-man rotation. So buckle up, folks. Gonna be interesting. Maybe Jalen Pickett gets out there. Maybe Zeke Naji gets out there. But Denver doesn't have a lot of answers. They don't have a lot of solutions. Maybe Vlatko. Maybe he's a surprising one. It's hard for me to believe in that. Going to be interesting to see how Denver handles it. But for now, folks, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline and SCL Mortgage. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Obviously, this was recorded. Didn't actually go live. Apologies for that, folks. I just wanted to get this done. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I'll talk to you guys very soon.